Rent can be one of those things that you may not always be able to hit it on the head. But what I always tell people is go out in the areas that you're in, look at your comparable properties. And what we find is that if you put a half-done property out, you're telling prospect tenants, oh, just envision. People don't envision. They need to see what product that they're actually going to be getting. And everything goes back to communication. Everything goes back to how you treat your tenants. And we pride ourselves on the fact that I believe we're at like 89% of our tenants have been with us 2+ years.
I have a very special guest here. Her name is Rielle Green, and we've known each other for what, 5 years now, I think?
Coming
Eh,
up on 5 years, I believe.
Yes, and today's topic is going to be property management. Although she is modest, she's one of the queens in Atlanta when it comes to property management. So, Rielle, introduce yourself and what your company does.
So, as Phil stated, I am Rielle Green. I am a licensed real estate agent and associate broker here in Atlanta, Georgia. My company name is Boundless Management. We have been in business for 14 years, serving the metro Atlanta area. I've assisted, I don't know how many clients, thousands of properties over the years. We help those in the metro Atlanta area that are looking to maximize their ROI, achieve that through, our rental process.
And that's cool. One of the things that people always want to know is how did you get started in real estate?
So real estate has always kind of like been in my world. I grew up as a teenager. I watched my dad change lanes. He decided that he wanted to build my mother a house, and that spurred him into building several houses for my mother and also other people. And then he went into the commercial building. And so that I think that's what planted that little seed of real estate. So I was one of the fortunate people to, know what I want to do. So by the time I got to college, I studied real estate and business management. So I actually have a degree in business management and real estate, a certificate in entrepreneurship, and some other stuff from Georgia
Th-
State.
So, if you're giving advice to someone and they have to choose a property management company, what are some of the key things that they need to know when choosing a property manager?
There are a lot of things that you need to be aware of when choosing a property manager, but I would say the most important things are you really need to know who you're working with. You want to be able to trust that individual. You need to be able to know their management style. You want to be able to know what your contract state, because it may be times you have to pull that contract out and know exactly what to expect from that management company.
Okay, good, good. So, what are some recommendations on setting rent in a competitive market?
Rent can be one of those things that you may not always be able to hit it on the head. But what I always tell people is go out in the areas that you're in, look at your comparable properties. You can do a tour at any apartment complex and see what they are actually offering, especially if you're buying like a value add class D, class C, and you know you're going to have to do some renovations. Before you do those renovations, go into those other units and see what your market is bringing. Also, your property manager should also know, hey, in this specific area, one bedrooms that have these type of finishes, two bedrooms, etc., they rent for this range. And so you want to be able to be as close to that range as possible. Don't overshoot, and definitely don't undershoot, but just making sure that you actually verify what your market is doing, because we have some clients that they had an agent to sell them a property, and the agent told them, hey, you could rent this one bedroom or studio for $2,000 a month. This actually just happened with the 10 unit that we're managing. And the gentleman comes to us and he said, yeah, my agent sold me on this. It's going to be able to rent for $2,000 a month. It has 4 vacant units. And we pulled the comps, and I'm like, you're not going to be close to $2,000 a month. It's actually going to be high end 1450, depending upon those finishes. So that was when he had to rerun numbers. And that's $550 difference from what his previous numbers were. So that totally changed the ballpark of what he thought he was going to be able to do. So just really getting into the market and actually knowing exactly what the units in that area will rent for.
That's good to know because I tell my students all the time, do your comps before you submit that LOI. So that's a good lesson for someone to learn.
And if they can go out and if they can actually go out to the area, I don't know if they'll be buying locally or not, but if you can go out in that area and go to other apartment complexes, walk around, act like you're, interested in renting. And that property manager will be glad to just show you around and ask those questions. Asking the right questions before you get into something and actually having valid answers will save you a lot in the long run.
That's so true. That's so true. So, as far as your company, what do you do as far as marketing and advertising to get new tenants in the properties you manage?
Our marketing process is we start with the product. We don't market the property unless it's in the condition that we want it to be seen in. A lot of people will bump their head because they want to get that rental rate as they want to get that rental income, excuse me, as fast as possible. So sometimes they rush to put the property out there and the property is not ready. And what we find is that if you put a half done property out, you're telling prospect tenants, oh, just envision. People don't envision. They need to see what product that they're actually going to be getting. And it actually will set the tone because if the first 2 weeks that their property hits the market, you should be under contract. You should have a LOI signed and saying, hey, this is going to be your new unit. If you do it and you don't show the property in the way in which you want it to be received, the people that could have been your tenant, they may be like, they didn't care that the unit wasn't clean. They didn't care that the blinds were raggedy. They're not going to care when I have, something that needs to be addressed. And so those tenants are now gone to your competitors and signed a lease there when they could have been your tenants. So just take the extra time and make sure that when you're going to do your marketing, that the properties are in the condition that you actually are willing to sign a lease today. And
That's true.
then just making sure that your property management company is using the avenues to ensure that the property is widely seen. That could be either via social media, and then you have, I mean, the internet age we're in, you have rentals.com, Trulia, Zillow, obviously Zillow is the heavy hitter. You want to make sure that they have agreements with all of those large companies so that your property can be seen on apartments.com and things of that nature.
Okay. Okay. That's some very good advice. So, when they're looking for a property manager, they might want to ask them, are they using all those vehicles to market their property?
Exactly. And pay attention to, go to their website, look at what they currently have advertised for rent. Because if you see that the pictures are crooked, the pictures are dark, that's how they're going to market your property. So make sure that they have a high attention to detail so that detail can translate for your homes.
One of the
Or
things I always tell my students is that they should go visit other properties that manager is managing. So, find out what else they're managing, walk those properties and tour those properties to see, hey, what's the reason? It looks this way or that way. And that way they get a good feel of how that manager is working.
I've
Like,
never thought
you,
about that, but that is actually a really good one because you can really pinpoint, what exactly is being done, and it's not just mouth service. You can see actually what they care about based on the conditions of the other properties.
yeah, I had a property manager that I was hesitant to go with, and I did do that. I toured the properties. And then when I had my interview with them, I said, well, I toured your properties, but this particular one was this way and that way. And they said, listen, we manage your properties, but we can't force the owner to spend money. And
That's right.
it was just one property. So I went with that property manager. They gave me a good enough answer. So one of the big things I think is tenant retention. What does your
Oh,
company do to keep tenants in place? Because we know that turning tenants is expensive. So what do you guys do to keep tenant retention?
Phil, I think a lot of the just being in this field, everything goes back to communication. Everything goes back to how you treat your tenants. And one thing I always pride ourselves we pride ourselves on the fact that, uh, I believe we're at like 89% of our tenants have been with us 2 plus years, and before COVID, it was even higher than that, and I believe it's because the way in which we treat our tenants. If you treat people with respect and care, it is naturally reciprocated back to you, and management styles can be so vastly different. You can have a property manager that focuses strictly on the numbers, but treat the tenants with disrespect. And even if that tenant is a paying tenant, they're not going to stay at that property because they don't feel heard, they don't feel seen. So you really want to make sure that your management company has the value system that builds a rapport with the tenants, because the rapport is what causes the tenants to want to stay. You want to make sure that your tenants feel like this is their home, that this is a teamwork type of effort, and those tenants will stick around time and time again. And then even if they leave, they come back to you. It happens to us all the time. I have people that leave for jobs, and then 3, 4 years later, they call and they're like, I used to live at 571 Cornwall. Do you guys have anything available? I want to be with your management team. So that speaks volumes. So just caring about people and making sure that your manager puts people first.
That's some very good advice because tenants, people overlook the value of the treatment that you give a tenant, which leads me to the next thing. How do you keep your tenants happy with your repairs and maintenance? How do you go about, handling them so that they feel satisfied?
You have to make sure that your management team has a system in place to deal with small repairs and large repairs. One thing with large repairs or emergency repairs, you need to say, "Hey, how do you guys treat emergencies? Do you have protocol in place?" And don't let them just tell you, "We do." Say, "Okay, what's the protocol if a tenant calls at 2 a.m. and say that my water heater is leaking? Do you, at the lease signing, did you identify the water shutoffs in the unit for the tenant?" Small things like that helps to ensure that, a small issue don't turn into a much larger issue. So you want to make sure that the property management team has the ability to accept written repair requests. I
Okay.
put much emphasis on that because tenants will oftentimes say, "Oh, I told Becky. I called into the office and I told Becky." And that's fine. We allow our employees to take a call, but we always say, "Hey, but we need you to put this in writing so we can have specifically what was needed and also be able to go back to that," because tenants will oftentimes say, "I reported something," and they did not.
From an
Um,
owner's perspective, I'm always concerned about staying on budget with repairs and maintenance. How does a new owner stay on budget? How do you help them stay on budget?
with each one of my clients, I make sure, well, I think my goal is always to save them money, even if they're like wanting to spend it all. And I'll tell them quick, like, we don't need to do that. But I treat all of my staff know, you have to treat these properties as if they were your own. Treat this owner money as if it was your own. You wouldn't be as quick to pull out a checkbook if it was your property. So you may have some tenants that are just kinda nitpicky and always wanting this little thing and that little thing. We will try to couple repair requests so that you're not constantly going out to a property, every week or every month for small items. We minimize the visits to the property. We also build that rapport with the tenant so that they take stock in the property. And we'll say, we don't come out and change light bulbs. That is a tenant responsibility. We found that a lot of owners were spending money on things that are small, such as, "Oh, my front doorknob is loose." We'll send a quick video to the tenant on how to tighten your doorknob or how to check your breakers. We want them to be vested into the unit so that it minimizes the cost to the owners.
That's good. I found over the years, I've had many, many management companies and managers like yourself who treat the property like it's their money have worked out the best for me because the ones that just get one estimate and okay, I
Yeah.
find I spend so much more money. So you said a key thing there that I think all new people getting in understand that their management is going to treat it like their own.
Yeah, even one part of our process, I kinda laugh when I say it, but we were hiring people that were homeowners you at some point, and everyone on our staff, currently, everyone on our staff owns a home, and just that little piece, it does so much more because I what I was finding is that the individuals that were renters, and nothing against renters, but it's just a different mindset. When you're a homeowner, "Oh, my AC broke, now I have to spend $6,000 on a unit." A renter is like, "The AC broke, I just called someone." It doesn't hit the same, and so what I was finding is that though the employees that never owned a home, they just didn't quite get the expense structure of things as much as the people that, actually had
That's
a
a
property.
very good tip. I never even thought of that. That's something I wouldn't even thought of, but that's absolutely true.
Yeah,
It's a different mindset, a
it's a
tenant
different
versus an
mindset,
owner.
for
They
sure,
look at
for
things
sure,
differently.
for
So
sure,
what
and then also have a I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No.
We also have a policy where we will get 2 to 3 bids for HVAC repair, water heater repair, plumbing line repairs. You don't wanna always go with your first bid. You wanna make sure that you're, speaking to the vendors and getting details of the work that's being done so that when you are comparing bids, you're actually comparing the same work and not just one vendor will tell you, "I'm gonna replace your line for 30 grand," or whatever the case may be, but they don't go into detail. And another company may say, "I'll do X, Y, and Z," and go into all this detail, and it could be a little bit more, and you're thinking, "Well, this guy's only gonna charge me 30,000," but they didn't disclose that they're not going to, reseed the grass and, come out and make sure that the area is watered and covered with hay and all of those things. So just always getting details on your bids can save you a lot of money as well.
Clearly, your experience gets you to that point, and that's some good information right there. Now, always you're going to have tenant complaints or tenants that don't get along. How do you handle those situations so that you have a harmonious situation with these tenants?
Tenants that don't get along can be quite interesting. We have some crazy stories about tenants that don't get along, but I always just try to encourage tenants to, speak with one another, kind of sort out the differences. I've actually sent staff to a property and I've set up the evaluations to be at the same time for the two units that are always at each other's head. And I'll say, you know, see if you can get them to meet outside and introduce themselves and say, "Hey, my son, I know that he runs a lot and you can hear him, playing. We're not trying to, keep you up at night." Sometimes you just have to get the people to understand that this is another person too. Humanize the situation and get them talking, and they'll realize that they actually can get along. But then sometimes you have issues where no matter what you do, somebody can just be a negative Nancy and they're never going to get along with anyone. We definitely try to, you know, diffuse any arguments. But if in the event that the police need to be called, we always say, ensure your safety and your health and well being and call the police if needed. But, we will try to go in there and just make sure that, hey,
Now, as you're speaking, an idea came to mind. When new tenants are moving in, do you have them meet the tenant next door and the tenant
yes,
next door kind of like
yes, we do. That makes me think of this. We have a quad where we had 3 units that they have been there for 10 plus years, and the lady downstairs moved out, and they were all like, "Who's gonna be our new neighbor?" They were, everyone's on edge because they know everyone. They've been living together, for all of these years. When Ronald moved in, I placed Ronald from another. He was at one of our other properties that was being sold. He wanted to stay with our management, so I put him in one of our other units. When Ronald was moving in, we took Ronald and introduced him to everybody and everybody and said, "Hey, this is Ronald, this is what he does," and they was able to build that rapport right off the bat, and it's been smooth sailing ever since.
okay, okay.
That'll be up
But
now that will be difficult when when you have like, it wasn't as easy in this 10-unit building that we acquired last year, but you try.
yeah. Okay, here's a more difficult question. How do you handle owner complaints?
I'm fortunate, I don't get A lot of owner complaints, and I believe that's because of the management style that we have, the transparency. We are a team. We're a team. That's how we look at it. We're staying in constant contact with the owner. The owner, I understand the owner goals, the staff understands the owner goals, and the owner also understands, what we are here to do. A lot of times a owner complaint is because they have assumed, that a process will go a certain way, and perhaps my property manager didn't disclose like that. It oftentimes goes back to what did we do in the situation where they weren't aware of how this could go. So you just try to diffuse this situation, make sure that everyone is being transparent, with receipts on the repairs at the property, timely reports of accounting. Every time a tenant pays, our owners get, a notification that this unit has paid. The management agreement is really where you're really going to be able to diffuse a lot of issues, because the management agreement should outline all expectations that, the owner should get for the property.
Okay. So good communication.
Good human communication goes, I mean, for the tenant and the owner. If you're communicating, you'll have people, it'll be your sweet spot.
That's good. That's good. How do you keep in abreast in compliance of all the laws that come about and how to handle those? How does your company go about that?
Well, we're all also licensed agents, all property managers, everyone is licensed. So not only do you have to, keep up with your mandatory license law, we also have our staff to do additional classes that may be offered by our local chapters. And we just try to keep our pulse on what's happening in the areas that we're managing properties, whether that be with a particular city changing codes in relation to how many occupants can be in a certain number of bedrooms. You just want to keep your pulse on what the local government is doing as well, and always making sure that you're staying compliant to state laws if you're licensed.
Okay. Now, what are some of the things you do as far as tenant screening to get the right tenant in there so that you can have the retention that you have?
Tenant screening is going to be your bread and butter in this business, because it's very easy to put a tenant in a property, but it is hell, excuse my language, to get someone out of a property. So if you want to focus on one thing real and be really good at it, it's the tenant screening process. So with the tenant screening process, we have a department that focuses on tenant screening. We, in the past few years, we have seen fraud rise tremendously, identity theft rise tremendously. I mean, you can go online and you can get a fake pay stub, you can get a fake ID. It's not, you don't have to be some whiz to get these things anymore. And so you want your staff to really know what to look for. We are oftentimes in company meetings comparing pictures of driver's license, comparing pictures of social security cards. We fine tooth comb the readings that come back. We use Propertyware for our screening, and it sends us a full report of background, criminal, employment, and we fine tooth comb and go through it and find any inconsistencies. One thing that has really helped us is on that credit report, it will come up with past addresses. A lot of people just breeze by past addresses. We don't do that. We look into each of those past addresses and make sure that, when did you say you were staying here? Are there inconsistencies? You can catch people in lies, but just really fine tooth combing, making sure that the person that you put in the property is the person. They have lots of tools out there, different apps, even with scanning. You can scan a license now and it can tell you if it's real or fake. We do social media searches for all of our tenants as well. If their page is open, we are looking, making sure that the picture on the license matches this name. We're also seeing if, hey, does this person seem to lead a kind of like rambunctious party style? Will they at work in this unit? All of those things will help you win with placing the right tenant.
One of the things I find helpful also is when they give you, I don't know if you get the bank statements from them.
Yes,
I make sure the pay stubs are entering that,
that's the base. Yeah, exactly.
but they'll tell you to make an X and then the pay stub deposit
The
is a different number.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You have to make sure that, are you getting direct deposits? They're like, "Yes," and so, "Okay, send us over your bank statements and we can verify that."
Right,
Um,
right.
And also with a pay stub, you'll find that even when they're Googling and getting these fake pay stubs, they're not taking the time to make sure that the year to date actually matches. We will calculate what their year to date is supposed to be. There's a lot of ways that you can catch these people, but they're getting really good. I will
Yeah,
say
they
that.
get better, right? They get what
They
we
get
get
better.
better,
As
they
you
get
get
better.
better, they get better.
So tell me anything you feel that's important for someone getting a relationship with your company that's new in, ownership of multifamilies. What advice would you give them? Any?
With someone just entering that arena, I would say interview multiple property managers, really sit down and get to know their business, their practices, don't take their word for it, their processes, try to verify as much as you can, ask for a sample income and expense statements, ask for a sample year to date. You want to basically see, the documents that you're going to be receiving before you sign up with a management company. Always ask to review the management agreement beforehand and also ask to review the lease that the tenants are going to get as well. You want to see if are you entitled to late fees or is the management company entitled to late fees? You want to understand all practices. If the lease is being broken by the tenant, are you gonna be entitled to a early termination fee, or does that go to your management company? You just wanna make sure that everything that the management company says that they're going to do, you're gonna try to really pinpoint that down before you sign up with them to make sure that process works for you, because management styles don't always match.
Okay, okay. So now here's a fun question.
Okay?
What's the craziest thing you found in a vacant unit?
We had a dead cat in a refrigerator
Ooh,
of a occupied unit.
of an occupied unit. Ooh. He froze
Yeah.
the cat.
It was in the refrigerator and it was on a plate and not just I don't understand the psyche of a person that would do that. I mean, like pass the milk and go by the cat. And they wanted us to bury their cat. They wanted our maintenance team to bury the cat. The average vacant unit, you're gonna find that people just may not live as clean or as neat as you do. You'll be sometimes disgusted by the way people live, but we try to get ahead of those things also by doing evaluations of our units. And oh, that's a really good point because I would make sure that the management company is not just accepting rent at the property. Some management teams want to just say, the rent is paid, your occupancy is up, that's what matters. I want to also make sure that the unit itself is being well taken care of. Because when it's time to turn that unit, if that tenant has been just running amok, you're gonna be spending a lot of money in that unit, and so we go to our properties at a minimum of twice a year. We take pictures of the interiors of those units and we report that back to our clients to say, this tenant has a hoarding problem. This is what we're doing, to ensure that they declutter XYZ. This tenant child may, write on every wall in the unit. We'll tell the tenant, you have to correct this within a certain amount of time. All of those things are also laid out in the lease. So we can refer to the lease and say, this is what you're required to do. And we, just working with the tenants to make sure that they know that we're doing this so that they can get their deposit back. If you do things and remind tenants that you're not trying to penalize them and you're actually doing it to help them, it gets you a long way as well.
That's great. Now, do you have any books that you would recommend that someone in property management or?
I wouldn't property management specifically, I actually do not, but property management is a people business. And I would say the two books that one book I just love, and it's As a Man Thinketh. I'm sure you've heard of it, Phil.
Yes. Yes, I have it on
It's
my
a
bookshelf.
Yes, it's a very short read, but it really embodies everything that is needed in this business. And another good book is Unreasonable Hospitality. The book is discussing the food industry, but you can totally apply it to in any industry that you're in, and especially with property management, it is a people-focused business. So focus on people and you'll make a lot of money.
Well, Riel, it's been unbelievable. Glad to have you on. Um,
Thanks,
this is a
Phil.
great interview. Tell my audience how they can get a hold of you if they've got some property they need management for in Atlanta.
You can find us at boundlessmanagement.com. That's BOUNDLESS management spelled out.com. Our number is 404-881-1801, and we are available to help anyone that is looking to expand their territory in the metro Atlanta area. I have clients all around the world, and we are here to help.
All right. Rielle, thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you on, and I wish you the very best in your property management.
Thank you, Phil. Always a pleasure.